Hey, holistic healers. Want to know if this podcast is for you? Let's find out. Blue Sage Holistic Healing is a health-based spiritual community emphasizing the use of Eastern and Western techniques to prevent and treat disease. We focus on the mind, body, spirit, the divine, and beyond as a means of self-healing and using the least invasive interventions necessary. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Blue Sage Holistic Healing Podcast, where Western meets woo-woo, science meets spirituality, and medicine meets magic. My name is Ashley Francis, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also your host. And today we are joined by the lovely Melanie McDonough. And Melanie is a certified master hypnotherapist, teacher, and past life regressionist. She's also certified with the International Association of Counselors and Therapists. It is one of her greatest passions to help others succeed, grow, and overcome their personal hurdles. While living in Charlotte, she discovered the power of hypnosis and guided meditation and chose to leave a career as a civil engineer to pursue hypnotherapy. Since that time, she has seen so many lives improve and change for the better with hypnotherapy and could not be more confident in this form of holistic healing. She specializes in both spiritual and clinical hypnotherapy for overcoming issues and helping clients realize their full potential and transform their lives for the better. So before we get into this, I wanted to just go over an exhaustive list of just some of the things that clinical hypnotherapy can help with. And the reason why I want to go through this long list is because I want to help people understand that there are so many different ways to heal and to get help. Oftentimes people think that just needing to go the traditional route of talk therapy, going to a psychiatrist or going to your doctor, if you're having any of these issues, is really the only options that we have. And that could not be further from the truth. And that is really one of the biggest reasons why I created this podcast in the first place, was to help educate people. Like, we've got tools, we've got other options, and hypnotherapy is a really, really good option. So I'm going to go through this list. And if any of those things, if they resonate with you, hey, maybe hypnotherapy is for you. So they are addiction, anxiety, age regression, allergies, career success, concentration, confidence, creativity, depression, dealing with death or loss, eating disorders, emotional disorders, exam anxiety, fears and phobias, forgiveness, finding your life purpose, fertility and birth, guided meditation, habits, insomnia, motivation, migraines, nightmares, OCD, pain, panic attacks, public speaking, quit smoking, rejection, relationship troubles, self-esteem and worth, skin problems, sleep disorders, social phobias, sports performance, stage fright, stress, weight loss, worrying, and writer's block. Whew. That's a big long list. Yeah, so that is some of the things that clinical hypnotherapy can help with. And then there's also spiritual hypnotherapy that comes in the form of womb regression, past life regression, and spiritual regression. So obviously I'm going to let Melanie talk about all this stuff, but I just wanted to preface this that there's a whole lot of things that this stuff can touch, and how cool and inspiring that is. So first, I want to start with your bio. What is your background? What brought you into this work? How does it inspire you? Yeah. How did you get here?
Okay. Well, first, thank you so much for having me here. So a little bit about myself and my background. My background educationally is actually in civil engineering. I got my degree at Ohio State. I've always really been interested in science and math and understanding how things work and why they work that way. But then I also started to open up spiritually. After I worked in civil engineering for a couple of years, I started practicing meditation, doing lots of visualizations, and just learning, going down all kinds of wormholes, learning all about spirituality.
Were those two things related?
So They were kind of related in that I started to become very unfulfilled in my career. So when you're unfulfilled, that comes a lot of, right, like unhappiness and stress from the job. And I was just dealing with so many like passive aggressive emails at work and like the office politics, and all of that really did have me a little stressed. So that's when I started learning more about meditation and understanding that really nothing in my life has to change in order for me to see it a different way, and in order for me to find happiness and peace, right? That comes from within me. But I needed to be triggered in order to realize that I needed to be unfulfilled in order to get there.
Boom.
And so while I was learning simultaneously about meditation and opening up spiritually, I was like, okay, I gotta face the facts here. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this for the rest of my life. Like I'm only 2 years in, and that was scary to face that, right? Because I had put so much effort into getting my degree and becoming an engineer.
Yeah.
However, I, asked myself the hard questions, and I just started meditating on it a lot, taking lots of different personality tests, and learning about all different kinds of spirituality. And I was watching a documentary, and somebody in the documentary mentioned Helen Wambach, who was a psychologist in the 60s. And although the documentary really had nothing to do with past lives or hypnotherapy, they mentioned this person. And so they mentioned past life regression. And I was like, well, what is that? That sounds interesting. And my spiritual background is Christianity. So I'd never really thought about reincarnation. I mean, I really I just never gave it much thought.
Right.
But there comes in this study that she did. So she was a psychologist that started using hypnotherapy in her practice, especially helping people overcome fears and phobias. That's one of the things that hypnotherapy is most commonly used for, because in a state of trance, you have access to your subconscious mind. And so you can go to the root of a problem.
Right.
And through helping a client remember. And usually the client will go to a time in childhood, sometimes in adulthood, sometimes in the womb. And then also sometimes a client will go to a past life, even if they didn't come in with the intention of exploring a past life or even really believe in the fact that they had past lives.
Right.
And she was finding that after taking them to the root of the problem and helping them bring up the emotion and let it go, that fear or phobia would instantly be gone. Like they would come in with a horrible fear and they would leave the office without that fear. And we all know that the mind is really powerful, and our mind, especially when we sleep at night, can create like metaphors and similes to help us overcome issues. So that's what she thought it was. She thought it was just the mind creating a story in order to help you release a fear that wasn't helpful anymore.
Makes sense.
However, she was very curious about this. So she dived in and did a huge study to try and see, or kind of prove, that they were just not real lives remembered. So she took people, regressed them to a specific town in a specific time period, and then asked them specific questions like, okay, so you say you're in this town at this time period, what's the name of the sheriff? Questions like that we wouldn't have answers to because we saw it on the History Channel or because we learned it in history class. More like just random questions that could, though, the information could be verified.
Yeah.
Historically or factually. And she was really surprised when she found out that these were like real lives remembered. Like that's what she came to the conclusion. And so I'm listening to her interviews. I'm starting to read books on past life regression. I just can't get enough of it. And then when I was taking one of my personality tests to figure out what I would be most fulfilled in career-wise, they mentioned like therapy. And then I started thinking about hypnotherapy. Like, well, what if I could do this? Oh, I bet I would be really great at this, actually. And so I just took some time off of work, a few weeks, to go to class and get my certification in hypnotherapy, see if I liked it. I honestly didn't even know if it was something that I believed in. I used to think that hypnosis was something that you could like believe in or not.
Yeah.
It just seemed like too good to be true and too interesting for me not to have heard about it before. The first day I was in class, I was like, oh, this is for me. This is 100% what I need to be doing with my life. And then I was lucky enough to experience it myself, because at that point I hadn't even had a hypnotherapy session myself. And so of course, seeing it and experiencing it, now I'm like trusting in it more and more and believing in it. And my first clinical sessions that I did with like the practice sessions that I did with the students in class, I was able to help one person on my very first session overcome a horrible fear of bridges. Like she couldn't drive over the water without being terrified and having a panic attack. And after just one session, my first session I ever facilitated, she came into class that next day. Of course, she had to get to class through driving over a bridge, because that's what spirit probably wanted, for her to be able to overcome that fear. I mean, really, the rest is history. I I stopped working as an engineer full time, started doing that part time, and also was learning about manifestation. So I was able to manifest a career in hypnotherapy, and now I do it full time, growing my practice, bringing other hypnotherapists on, and that's just I love it so much, and it's just so fulfilling to see people improve their lives and heal, because they're ready to, and because they've been lucky enough to find us. Thank you for asking.
I'm getting emotional over here just listening to your passion about it, because that's really why we get into this work anyway, right? Because the passion finds us, and it's so visceral.
Definitely.
So it's nice to hear you talk about it that way.
Thank you.
And, I'm even curious about, speaking of childhood, of course, the therapist is going to ask about childhood, right? Just anything from your childhood, anything like for the way back that may have informed this coming about the way that it has?
Well, of course, I believe that everything happens for a reason. And my belief is that before we're even born, we kind of choose our family, we choose our parents, our environment. And oftentimes, people choose difficult experiences so that they can grow stronger and wiser and learn their lessons and ultimately become who they're meant to become. I needed and always have needed a lot of like love and affection. I'm very sensitive, as most of us empaths are. So my parents really just they gave me space to be myself, and I've always been a little bit different or thought about things a little bit differently. My mom was an engineer and my sister was an engineer, so that's probably why I went into engineering. And they were always somewhat religious, so we would go to like church every Sunday. And although I don't believe the exact same thing I did when I was a kid, I started to feel that spiritual connection even in Christian church. So I think my spirituality has always been with me, kind of informing me. But once I was able to step away from that environment that I grew up in and kind of explore a little bit on my own, I think I released some stuff that wasn't really serving me anymore, while still holding on to all of the great things that I did pick up from childhood, including my connection to spirit. And my parents were really just helped enforce confidence and self-worth. So I think that if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to leave my career as an engineer. I think I would have been too afraid. So, I'm giving my childhood, my parents props. I would always also ask about childhood, because the root of so many problems and the root of so many of our strengths, of course, as you know, go back to childhood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how fortunate you are to have that kind of experience, because I know that for me and also a lot of my clients, that's not necessarily the norm, and it doesn't even have to be an abusive, neglectful, or non-supportive environment. Those are definitely the cases that we see, but I'd say that most people fall in this average range of just feeling misunderstood. I feel like I'm a black sheep, or I'm just a little different. I'm more sensitive than other people, and I want to do something a little different, but I'm afraid to step out of my family of origin and the way that they do things, right? There tends to be this more unspoken expectations that your parents have for you, or maybe there just hasn't been a level of comfort in being able to talk about doing something unconventional, right? And I'm talking about me. And I've realized too over time that I've just kind of made that up. Just kind of made that up, because maybe I could have had more strength, and maybe had more, I don't know, what's the word? I guess just taking more risks to put myself out there and be seen, and to, I guess courage is the right word to say, hey, this is what I think. Right. I was also raised Christian, but after a certain age, we didn't go to church anymore. We didn't really talk about that kind of stuff. It's just like, we did that because that's what we were supposed to do, but not like spirit was any really defining part of my life the way that it is now. That's something that I've just kind of had to figure out on my own. And I still have issues with it, of just being able to dig into that solidity, a sense of self, and say, yeah, actually, I do believe in spirit, and I do believe in the law of attraction, and I do believe in woo woo and weird stuff and frequencies and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us struggle with that. I mean, even if you didn't get it from your family, you surely got it from society, and that fear of being judged or the need to be accepted. I mean, that drives so much of our decisions, and we're all born with that, right? That's what has always kept us alive and kept us safe, especially when we used, like, way back in the day when we were living in tribes. You had to be loved and accepted by the immediate people in your environment, or else you probably wouldn't have survived.
Right.
And so we still, even though things are so different now, and luckily we're able to go out into the world and connect with people and find our tribe, find the people that are going to love and accept us for exactly who we are, we can't help that. Like, that's how we're wired. Right. So there's something about, like, releasing unhelpful fears and unhelpful protection mechanisms. And you can do that through, therapy and through hypnotherapy. But there's also something to be said about feeling the fear and then just doing it anyways.
Preach. Yes. Yeah. What an integral part of growth, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, for those who are listening, you feel like a black sheep, you feel misunderstood, or you feel like, I'm talking about some crazy stuff that I feel like people are not going to understand. You're not alone, right? There's so many different ways to be able to connect, and that your people are out there.
Yeah,
for sure. And speaking of different ways of healing, and maybe even just connecting to spirit or connecting to sense of self, what are some other things that you have explored, past or present, that has been helpful for you?
for connecting spiritually?
Yeah, spiritually, to yourself, but also maybe self-improvement, being better than I was yesterday, that kind of stuff.
Being super introspective, like, constantly. I'm very spiritual, but I'm also have that analytical side. So constantly asking myself questions like, well, why am I feeling this way? And what story am I telling myself? And what are my self-beliefs? One of the books that really, really influenced me is Mastery of Self by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Have you read that one?
I know him, but I haven't read that one.
I think Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. is the son. Don't quote me, but I think it's the son of the guy that wrote Four Agreements.
Right.
And it's so good. It really talks about, like, anytime you are angry or sad or upset at somebody else or a situation. In the past, it was just my normal reaction to, like, blame that person or blame that situation or that experience and say, like, well, that's not fair, or you're being mean to me, or whatever. And some of that might be true. It might not be fair, and that person might be being mean to me. But when I react and get emotional and get upset now, and it's a practice, I look within and I say, what is at the base of it? Usually there's some insecurity, or some self-limiting belief that is being triggered within me.
Yeah.
So that person is telling me something on some level. I might believe it to be true. And now I'm getting really upset. So using all of my experiences where I'm triggered and upset as a learning experience, and trying not to point the finger and actually ask myself what ways I can change, or not even change, but release the things that were never made to begin with.
Yeah.
So that I can not get triggered next time, because I don't want any person or any external situation to be able to take away my inner peace and my inner calm. So asking myself those hard questions, even asking myself that hard question, like, am I fulfilled in my career? And that's really was such a huge catalyst for me, because the answer was no. But most people, I think, don't even ask themselves those questions because they're afraid of the answer. That, in conjunction with meditation and the power of positive thinking. I think I mentioned this earlier, but nothing in your life really has to change in order for your perspective to change.
Right.
And that's one of the things I love most about therapy, is, like, the reframing aspect. So my, different therapists that I've gone to have helped me to reframe. And now I'm able to also continue going to therapy, because everybody should. Everyone can benefit from that. But now I'm able to do that on my own as well. So that meditation, and then, like, a physical practice really helps me and really grounds me. So I regularly do yoga. I love acupuncture. That's really great for getting the energy moving and releasing energetic blocks. And then, of course, I also do hypnotherapy. So I had to find somebody in the community and it took a little while for me to find someone that resonated with me. But for me, the most drastic changes in my life have come from some hypnotherapy sessions.
Hmm.
And then I'm sure I'll continue to find new modalities too.
Of course.
Like I'm ever changing. I'm always trying new things and new ways to really find my authentic self.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that you think hypnotherapy has given you the most profound results?
Yes.
Cool.
I would say the most profound and the most like quick. Like hypnotherapy, like some people look at it as a quick fix, and I would never tell anyone that it is a quick fix, although for some things it is. Like for some old protection mechanisms that aren't even applicable to me in my life anymore, that have really caused trouble in my relationships, my personal relationships of me getting upset and triggered, I've been able to release and let go of in just one session.
Hmm.
And then also like the spiritual side of it. So having done past life regressions, tapping in a past life regression session, I was able to tap into my purpose, meet my spirit guides, and, heal from past lifetimes. Just like we can carry forth trauma and negative energy from our childhood, we can also do that from past lifetimes. So that's another way for me to release that and let that go.
Yeah.
Whereas otherwise, I may never have even known it was there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, 5,000 questions. I want to start with, let's help the audience understand what's the difference between clinical and spiritual hypnotherapy.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I get that a lot in consultation calls. When I say clinical hypnosis, obviously that means like that feels super clinical, right? But really it's not. So with clinical hypnosis, it's when you have a specific issue or a specific goal that you're working on. And the goal for some people is very, very specific, but sometimes it's just like general relaxation.
Mm.
And the sessions are an hour and a half. So the sessions are shorter, and we usually spend the first like 10 to 30 minutes just talking and understanding the issue and understanding the goal. And it is kind of important for you to come in and at least generally understand like what you're working on and what you want the outcome to be.
Sure.
And sometimes the goal is just to explore and see what's going on within my subconscious.
Love that.
Yeah, and that's why I do thank you for reading out that laundry list of things that are from my website. The reason why it's such a huge list of different issues and goals that can be worked on in the clinical hypnosis space is because when you go into a state of hypnosis or a state of trance, you have access to your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind, it holds a ton of information. It's like 95% of your entire mind's functioning or your entire mind's power.
Yeah.
And it holds all of your belief system. So everything you believe to be true about yourself and others. It's also in control of any protection mechanisms you have, and anxiety is a protection mechanism, or any fears that you might have. It also is in control of all of your automatic bodily systems, including the chemicals and hormones that are released into the body. The chemicals that make you feel really happy, or the chemicals that make you feel stressed and feel sad. And so that's why there's so many different things that we can work on, is because we have access to the subconscious. And clinical hypnosis, usually it only takes anywhere from like 2 to 6 sessions to meet a goal. So unlike, traditional talk therapy and counseling, where we could benefit from going as often as you can, as long as you can. Hypnotherapy.
I disagree with that, but we'll get into that.
Okay. Well, I personally love having someone to talk to and help me to reframe and like bounce ideas off of, like a non-biased person.
Mm-hmm.
But right, if you keep talking about the same thing over and over and over again, that's not really what I mean, right? I'm not talking about going to a therapy session, talking about one issue, bringing up all those emotions, and then not having anything to do with it. But rather, as you evolve and as you change, you're probably going to have new things to talk about.
Well said.
Thank you. But yeah, so the hypnosis sessions usually, like for a specific goal, anywhere from 2 to 6 sessions on average is how often somebody would come and see me for that.
Beautiful. Love that. Love that. And yeah, I'm in the minority among my colleagues for sure, because of my views on therapy as far as like the length and what we're really there to do. Because a lot of people think about traditional psychotherapy in terms of, well, God, I'm going to be there for, weeks, months, years, because we traditionally think of Freud, right? Then that was the way therapy was done and still is done if you're doing proper psychoanalysis. But there's so many different types of therapy. And I think that things have just changed. They've changed over time. We have more access to more information, and we know a lot more, and we're able to learn more about ourselves. So Yeah, I think people have the ability to get more help and put things together more quickly compared to what we've had in the past. Right. And I think that therapy needs to model that for sure. And I'm talking about traditional psychotherapy, because hypnotherapy, I think, already kind of has this in mind. It's already within the design of it. Right. So, the way that I explain it to my clients is, I really just want you here for a chapter. Because if you are here longer than, months, if you're here for years, you are subconsciously integrating this stigma that you're fucked up, that you're permanently damaged, that I need to be in therapy, which is this mode of, being in a problem saturated state of mind for a really long time. And I think that kind of goes against what we're made of. Like, we already have the answers inside of us. We are our own guru. It's just a matter of meditating or getting to those right answers. You're already perfect the way that you are. So why keep going into a process that is reinforcing this negative idea that you're messed up? Right. Wow. So go to therapy, be there for the chapter. Do we get to determine how long that is? No, you do. You determine how long that is. But when the chapter's over, go live your life, put it into action. Like you were just saying, I think go do other things, try hypnotherapy or try Reiki or try acupuncture or Tai Chi or something else to get into some movement to integrate all that. And then another chapter is going to come, because that's just the way that life is. And then maybe go back to therapy at that time. And that's the way that I like to explain it to clients. Like I said, I am a minority.
This is the first time I've ever heard a therapist say that. but I admire, I respect that opinion and admire that, and can totally see truth in that.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. So anyway, we got off track. We were talking about clinical and so the times of the duration of sessions. Okay. So that's what somebody would come to you for clinical hypnotherapy. Yeah. And then for spiritual hypnotherapy. So what does that look like?
So the clinical side, so many different ailments and things you can work on. Most common is people that are dealing with feelings of anxiety or feelings of depression or self-worth. And then also all the different things you can look on that laundry list on my website. And then the spiritual side is also pretty open, but people usually come with the goal to connect spiritually. And there's two different types of services I guess it's three different types of services that we offer that are under that umbrella of spiritual hypnotherapy. The first being womb regression. That session is about 2 hours long. And that's when you remember what it was like to be in your mother's womb. And I could talk so long about that specifically, but I'll just keep it brief for now. The main reasons why people would want to recall what it was like to be in their mother's womb. Well, one, it's just interesting, right? We're very curious about that. It can be enlightening, but in that space, you are very connected to your mom. You're very connected even to your father, surprisingly, and you have an understanding of so many different things, because not only are you like, part of you is here on this earth plane and is already like embodiment, but then there's still a part of you that's like connected to the spiritual realm. I mean, there's still a part of us right now that's connected to the spiritual realm, but even more so in the womb. You're in this in-between space. And so you have an understanding of why you chose your parents, why you chose your physical body, what you're coming here to do, if you're bringing in any special skills or abilities. So people that are really wanting to like tap in more to their life purpose sometimes might come in just for a womb regression session. A lot more can happen in that space, though. It's not uncommon for issues to stem from the womb. So because you're so connected to your mom, if she is suffering from self-worth issues, or she feels like she's not good enough, then you take those emotions on as your own. Right. Not every time, but often.
Right.
Or if mom isn't feeling ready for you, maybe this pregnancy wasn't planned and you're unexpected. And although, on some level they want you and they're excited, there's still a big part of them that's like, I'm not ready yet. This isn't the right time for me. Like, I don't want this. And because baby is so connected to you, your baby does hear and feel your emotions and your thoughts and your beliefs, but doesn't have the analytical skills that we have as an adult. Our ego is fully developed to be able to understand, like, that doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. That just means that this is a situation and my mom wasn't ready. That has nothing to do with my worth. We can't get that and understand that as infants.
So it's getting
So-
transferred to us,
Exactly.
and we don't have the cognition to be able to decipher that.
Exactly.
It just,
Yeah.
it's getting in there.
It's getting in there. So that can be a very enlightening space to be in. And it can also be a healing space in that you can bring up those negative emotions that you took on from your parents and you can let them go. Because now we do have those analytical skills. And in a hypnosis session, might be a good time to say that you're not asleep. You remember the whole session. You're just deeply relaxed.
Yeah.
So there's part of you that's feeling what it was like to be a baby in your mother's womb, and to be preparing for birth. And then there's another part of you that's analyzing what's happening. So, at the same time you're feeling like, oh, I'm feeling like I'm not good enough. I'm not ready for this. There's that other part of you that's like, but you are good enough and you were ready for this, and you don't have to feel that way anymore because that's not the truth. And so you can, in that moment, you just let all of the burden of those feelings and those thoughts, you can let those go.
Yeah.
So that's a womb regression.
Yeah.
And then there's past life regression, which is a 3-hour session. And everyone's different. And we do go to different spaces in the sessions. We're not rigid. We'll go where your spirit and your higher self wants to take you. Usually what happens is you explore a past lifetime. And typically we start by bringing you backwards along your timeline. So after you're in a nice deep state of hypnosis, and that's just like your brainwave. Technically what's happening when you're in trance is that your brainwaves have slowed down, which is a very normal, natural process. Once you're in that space, we'll bring you through happy memories from your current life, just to walk you backwards along your timeline, getting you comfortable sharing what you're experiencing. So if someone comes in and they're 45 years old, after I do an induction with them to get them into that space, we might take them to a happy memory from their 30s and then have them share what they're experiencing, what memory was shown to them, and then continuing to go further back along that timeline until they're in like happy memory from their childhood. And then we can take them to a past life that they're meant to explore. And sometimes people are just curious and just open. So that's how we frame it, going into a past life that you're meant to explore. Or sometimes people have like specific interests. Maybe they struggle with relationship problems with their mom, and they just feel like they've always had these issues, and they're curious if it stems from a past life. Or maybe they have like a really interesting birthmark that they want to see if that stems from a past life. Or maybe they have like a fear of falling off a cliff, and they know that they've never fallen off a cliff in this lifetime. So they want to see where that stems from. So we can keep it open, or we can get quite specific. Other people feel really, really connected to a certain culture or a certain time period. And so they want to learn more about themselves. And that past life session, it's like you're embodied. Typically what's happening is you're embodied in the scene in the past lives. You can understand who you were, how you felt, the major experiences you had in that life, how you spent your time, your relationships. And then you will eventually go through your death scene and remember what it was like to go up to the spirit world. So even in that past life session, there's still a portion of the session where you recall what it was like to be in like that spiritual energetic form.
Yeah. And
then usually what happens is once you enter the spirit world, at some point your spirit guide comes and meets with you.
Guide or guides?
So in like, usually in that time frame, one guide will come to meet you, but in that's just like to greet you.
Okay.
So like, but everyone's different. Like sometimes their ancestors come and greet them, or sometimes their loved ones from that past life come and greet them first.
Pets?
Let's see. I definitely have had some pets.
Yeah.
I've had some pets. I've also had spirit guides that have appeared as pets. Now, spirit guides can take on many different forms.
Right.
So I don't know if the spirit guide is just like choosing to show themselves that way, or if a spirit guide could be a pet.
Yeah. I guess we'll know.
I'm undecided on that.
Yeah.
Like
right.
I'm open to
whatever
perspective. Yeah. But in that space, normally what happens, at least from my experience, is that one guide comes and meets with them. But my belief is that we do have many different guides and spiritual teachers, and they're at like all different levels of learning themselves. I like to think of the spirit guide as like the TA, the one that works with you most closely in your life, but isn't necessarily like the wisest of all of the beings. And my spirit guide probably also has spiritual guides and teachers as well.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, so in the past life session, usually then you'll review your life with your guide to understand why you were shown that life, how it still affects you in your current life, what the purpose of that past life was. And sometimes we have the same purpose through multiple lifetimes,
Right.
or we're working on like the same theme
Right.
through multiple lifetimes. And then ultimately,
like humility or patience or that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Or just love. Right. And
Okay.
there's different like lessons. If you're working on humility, like there's different lessons within humility that you might work on within each lifetime, but you might work on the overall theme of humility for 10 lifetimes, or
Right.
however many it takes until you really get it.
Got it.
And then after you review that life, that's usually so in that space, you could ask your guide questions. If you have any questions, like questions you might ask your higher self or your intuition, or even like an intuitive, you could ask your guide in that space, because you are communicating with them directly, and sometimes they'll answer you. So that's the past life session. And we do really do quite a lot of things within that 3-hour time period.
Sure.
But it's interesting because there's a sense of timelessness when you're in hypnosis. So even though you're not asleep, that 3-hour session might actually feel like an hour,
right?
Or like
15 minutes.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it feels like a really long time. But I've never had anyone be like, okay, how long have we been in here now? Like, I gotta go.
Yep.
I've never had that.
Yeah. You hear 3 hours when you're signing up for it and thinking, oh, that's forever. But then when you're in it, you're like, wow,
yeah.
Snap of time.
It goes by fast. It also goes by fast for me as a facilitator too.
I'm sure.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But then the third service that we offer at Inner Song Hypnosis for the spiritual hypnotherapy is, I call it spiritual regression. It's called Between Lives Spiritual Regression, or Lives Between Lives Hypnosis. And that is basically a recollection or a memory of what you did from the time of your last past life death all the way to the time of your current life birth.
Okay.
So what you did in the spirit world before you were born.
Yeah.
And that's when you would normally meet with like many different guides.
Got it.
You also meet with like your soul group or your soul family. You might even remember what it was like to choose your body, like to understand like why you're choosing your body and your personality and your likes and your dislikes and your intelligence. It's like we're setting ourselves up, where we're setting the stage in that space, so that, and then of course we have the amnesia and we forget once we come into our mom's womb.
Okay. I'm dying to know about that. I want to earmark that. Can we come back to that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's no like one size fits all for the spiritual regression, because we really do, although we go to many similar like stations and places, like over and over again, I'll have a client tell me that they're going to a place of healing or a place of rest and rejuvenation to like cleanse and release the residue from their last life. And then usually clients will go to a life review where they're understanding their past life and what lessons they learned, and wanting to know how they could best implement that in their next lifetime, which would be their current life. All different stations and places. Yeah.
So it could be a place of respite, or it could be a place for work, or is it kind of both?
It's all of the above and play. So sometimes clients will remember what it was like to just play with their play with their friends, their soulmates, their teachers. And in that space, we don't have the same kind of limitations. So, you can think of something, you can think of like the coolest place ever to go and play in nature. And then you can create that and go and take a physical embodiment and play around. So although there is a lot of work that's done in between lifetimes, it's also a place of ease and peacefulness and forgiveness. And you could have messed up and had a really hard life. And then once you go through that veil and you're on the other side, it's not like all that is forgotten, but there's a level of forgiveness and understanding, right? Like and if you didn't get it in that lifetime, don't worry, you're going to get another opportunity to learn your lesson in the next one.
So obviously that space sounds wonderful and we all want to be there. And I'm guessing that the soul is probably thinking, well, why the hell would I want to go back? This is so wonderful. But from what I understand, and correct me, that's not the intention here, that our intention is to become embodied, is to be here, to be in physical form, because that is where the lessons and the progression of the soul happens. Whereas if we're in the spiritual realm, that's not where that happens. That's really this gathering place to really determine what this next life is going to be like. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I do think that there's some like learning and some work in the spiritual realm. Like people might review their life in detail and understand like when they made the wrong decision or how they could have made a better decision. So there is still learning in the spiritual realm, but there's so much ease to it, and like it's peaceful. So yeah, I think that physical embodiment, it for us, at least right now on our journey, that's why we're here. We're here to learn our lessons. We're here to evolve. I believe ultimately we're supposed to learn how to live from more of a place of love and less from a place of fear. And that comes in many different ways. But sometimes I will have like, I'll get clients that are like, I just don't feel like I've never felt like I have a home. Like I feel like a black sheep, or I feel like an alien. I just don't like even like being in a human form.
Right.
Because some people are so spiritually connected. And I do think it's different for each soul. Like some souls take a path of physical embodiment where they're going to learn their lessons this way. I do think there are other souls that take a different path. I'm sure there are some souls that never physically embody and never have lifetimes on earth, but all paths lead, all paths lead to the light. Like no matter what path you take, I think that the path of earth is probably sped up because we can learn a lot in a little amount of time. And yeah, there's this feeling of going home when we go to the spiritual realm. And on a rare occasion, I'll have a client be like, I don't want to I don't want to leave this space. This feels so good. But
that'd be all the
we
time.
got to. Yeah, we have to.
And that's my question is, why do we have to? Because I would imagine that every soul in the spiritual realm is saying, this is so nice. I don't want to go back. Why would I go back?
Well, see, now you're really just getting so philosophical. Like I could guess. I could definitely guess. Like,
nobody knows, right?
If I told you that I had the answer to that, I would be lying.
Yeah.
But my thought is that, like, if you think of source, like source is, some people call it source, some people call it the universe, some people call it God, whatever words you prescribe to. I think of that as like an all-knowing, all-loving being. And that seems like really great. Like you can do anything you want. You have all of consciousness, but at some point, doesn't it have to get a little bit boring? You know what I mean? So I think of source as like fracturing it
for the challenge and the fun of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like if life was just easy and we were never challenged, I would find that boring personally. So I feel like I have this image of like source, like fracturing itself off into a million little pieces just to experience all the experience. What's the point of it all? I don't know. I think it's just for fun.
Yeah. I am in love with that explanation. I think that's so good. And I think what I love about it the most is it's so simple. We humans just want to complicate everything, and especially the analytical folks, like it's just got to be so complex. But what if it was? What if it was just that simple, that this is kind of for fun?
I mean, I'm sure there has to be a different reason. Like, there has to be a deeper reason, but I don't know. I feel like I've only just recently started to get a handle on like the purpose of physical life, like the purpose of physical embodiment.
Yes.
So like I feel, and although I'm ever changing, like as I get new information, my belief system is constantly evolving.
Thank God.
Yeah. That's like one of the things I love most about my current belief system, is that it really doesn't matter what anyone believes. As long as they're doing the best that they can and trying to learn their lessons and be a good person morally, like they're going to be fine.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But I think the purpose of our lifetimes is either to learn your lessons and figure out how to be more loving and more kind and more empathetic towards our fellow humans and the earth. And then there's also some of us here that are supposed to help others do that. And even those like helper souls, I think of those as like volunteer souls or light workers or empaths or healers. We are meant to be here to help and be of service to others so that they can learn their lessons and evolve. But at the same time, we're learning too. Right.
I'm writing down so much because I love this is so delicious. Okay. So one, I wanted to go back to when you were talking about how some people just kind of feel like they're more spiritually connected and maybe they're not exactly human, maybe something humanoid, or maybe they're, something from another planet. Thoughts on that? Any experience with that?
Yeah. I totally believe that there are souls here on this planet that are from other places, that are originated maybe on other planets. And I'm one of them. And a lot of the people that I attract, or that we attract at Inner Song Hypnosis, are those like alien souls. And when I say an alien soul, like I just mean a person that has had physical embodiments on other planets, and that they saw the call, like Earth probably sent out some kind of call for help. Like we need to raise our vibration. There's a lot of heavy stuff going on at Earth. Like come and help us. Just like you might, as a privileged person born in the United States, as you might go on a volunteer trip to a third world country. I kind of see that as souls coming here to help. Yeah.
And what are you?
So I know that there's a lot of different, like people have mapped out different like alien souls. I think at some point I read through all of them and resonated with one the most, but I think that there's probably a lot that haven't been mapped out, and I'm most likely one of those.
How could they be? I mean, there's so many options. You're not going to have all of it. Right.
Yeah. And most of the time, so in both past life regression sessions, I've had people go back to lifetimes on other planets. Those sessions are always really fun and really interesting. And then also I have been able to find, or my clients have been able to discover that through the spiritual regression. Because even if you've had, you go back to a lifetime where you were a human, once you die and you go up to the spirit world, your soul family and your spiritual teachers will probably appear to you in a form that you're most comfortable with, which most likely is not going to be a human form if your first lifetimes were on a different planet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, so I totally believe that.
Yes.
And also if any of the listeners are have read any of the Lives Between Lives books, Michael Newton, I think he had a lot of human resonant souls. So those are basically souls that most of their lifetimes have been on Earth. So maybe like whenever their little soul was born into the universe, they first came and embodied on planet Earth and continue to do so. And so those types of souls do go to very similar places and like stations in the spiritual realm. And that's been mapped out. So there's hypnotherapists that will tell you that they know exactly what goes on in the spirit world. And it's like very rigid, which I honestly kind of find funny.
Yeah.
But then I think a lot of those souls that have gone to those same stations and places are from Earth. Whereas souls that are here from another planet, they might have like a totally different spiritual setup, right? Like in the spiritual realm. So it's not going to look the same for every soul.
Yeah. Wow. My mind is blowing right now. And I wonder too, like you were saying that people that come to see you or seeking spiritual hypnosis in particular probably are of that caliber, that they are otherworldly or, from other planets. Is there a way to detect? Can you kind of see it in someone else since you identify this way? Can you sense it? Can you see it? Or is that more of a personal experience?
That's a great question. I I'm intuitive a bit. So I feel like I do have a sense, like I have a feeling, and I don't know how to describe it. Like I don't know why, intuition comes through. It's just like a knowing. So I do have, when I'm talking with somebody in the pre-talk before we go into the hypnosis part of the session, I might have this knowing. But usually if people are saying like, they're literally saying, I feel like I can't find any place that feels like home. Nowhere I travel on this planet feels like home. And I have this longing to go home. And this is, I'm not talking about like people that are suicidal, but I'm sure either you have felt that way or somebody, or you've had a client that has felt that way. That right there, although it's not always pointing at the fact that they could be an alien soul, it oftentimes is. And if they're a soul here from somewhere else, it doesn't have to mean that they're here to help and be a volunteer. But in my personal experience and from what I've read, that is the case. So usually if you're feeling that way and also you have a strong passion and desire to help people, and you feel spiritually connected and you feel like you're supposed to make an impact in some kind of way, or you find a lot of joy and pleasure in helping people, then there's a good chance that you're one of those souls.
Sure. Yeah. And I identify with that completely, because when you were talking about being able to do some regression work to figure out what your purpose is, I hear that a lot, in the work with my clients. I don't know what my passion is or what my purpose is. And a lot of times they feel like that's career. And I keep thinking, God, there's so much more than that, right? That's just small potatoes.
Right.
But those of us who are intuitive, we don't question that. We don't question what our purpose is. Now, I'm sure there's details to that, right? If I'm here to be a light worker, energy worker to help other people, yeah, there might be some details to that we're not aware of, and
Mhm.
maybe going into regression we can get access to.
Yeah.
But only speaking for myself,
Mhm.
I don't question it. Like that
Mhm.
wouldn't, if I were to come to you and have a session, I don't need that because it's
Mhm.
such a knowing and it's so profoundly apparent
Mhm.
in my being, right? And
Yeah.
I've known that since, I'd probably say I came into that solidly in high school age when I
Mhm.
was a teenager. And I'm very thankful for that. And that's not to say that I'm better than anyone or that,
Mhm.
my soul is more purposeful or has more validity than anyone else. It just happens to be the case.
Mhm.
Right. And there's a whole slew of other things that I need help with. That's
Mhm.
for sure. But it really does feel intuitive.
Yeah, and so many people will come in and ask me or want to know what the purpose of their life is. And I think like you're pointing to, a lot of people think that that means career, right? Like my purpose and my career have to align, and I have, and which I love that. Like if you want your purpose and your career to align, you
Sure.
certainly can find a career that aligns with your purpose, but
There's more.
there's so much more.
Yeah.
And we're living in our purpose. Like you basically can't not live in your purpose unless you're specifically avoiding the hard decisions and the hard questions. So like if you're doing each and every day, if you're doing your best to stay present and live authentically and try to like connect with that like best version of yourself when you're making decisions from that place, you 100% are living in your purpose.
Hmm.
And I do have a lot of people that come to me and say like, I want to know the purpose of my life. And I always ask them, well, like, what would you guess the purpose of your life is? Or if you had to think about it, like, what would be your best guess? And what do you think that you're meant to be doing here on the planet? And people are always like hesitate to answer that question because they don't want to be wrong.
Yes.
And I didn't actually start asking, like, putting that question back on them until maybe, I don't know, a couple years ago. And what I would find is that they already know, right? Like the people already know, but we don't trust ourselves.
That's it.
So even though you might have the intuition that you're supposed to be helping people and that you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z with your life, it's scary to trust ourselves sometimes. So we go to psychics and therapists and hypnotherapists and we play with tarot cards. And I love all those tools, by the way. I think they're there for a reason, but you already know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about, like I said, like either working through whatever is holding you back, that fear, or feeling the fear and just doing it anyways.
Yes. Yeah. And I try to help my clients understand that the type of therapy that you're getting with me, the type of psychotherapy, really all we're doing, like the number one objective that what we're trying to do is to get all of the shit that gets in the way of realizing who you are out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's it. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
simple explanation and it's not easy. The process is far
Mm-hmm.
from being easy, but that's it.
Yeah, I love that because in the past, I might have thought of it like, let me become somebody different. Let me change and evolve into who I am meant to become. But now I view it as I've always been who I'm supposed to be. And I just packed on all of this extra shit because we're humans and we have to learn to live in society and we want to be successful. And that's, the ego protecting us and keeping us safe. But we pick up all of these false self-beliefs and all of these unhelpful fears,
Toxic.
and we just carry on this baggage and we have all these extra layers of stuff that aren't even us to begin with.
Yep.
And hypnotherapy and therapy is a way to peel away those layers, and underneath all of that is your authentic self, whom you've always been and who you've always meant to be.
Yeah.
Like you have everything you already need within you. You don't
Yeah.
need to go out and find and be someone else. Tapping into who you already are.
Mic drop. That's right. Yeah. What a powerful concept.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's also a really optimistic concept too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because sort of like what you're saying, we get this misunderstanding that we've got to go through this arduous process of trying to figure out who we are. Once I do this, once I do, then I'll finally figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
No, you already have it.
Exactly.
So let's flip it and work opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I think if more people were to understand that concept, one, they'd probably do the work a hell of a
Mm-hmm.
lot more. And the results are easier.
Yeah. And I really do see that as like the core of what inner song hypnosis is and what I believe about this practice. Like there's so many different things we can work on and focus on, and it can get quite convoluted, but at its very core, it's called inner song hypnosis, because I believe that every single person on this planet is unique, and one, they're born in a unique fashion, so they have, unique skills, abilities, intelligence, ways of looking at things. But then all of their past experiences, the most difficult experiences and the most beautiful ones, the difficult ones have given them certain strengths and wisdoms, same with the most beautiful ones, and all of that makes them completely unique.
Yeah.
So there's nobody else on this entire planet that can help the world in a way that you can help the world. Like, you are completely unique. And if you find your authentic self and live from that place, you can't help but be successful, because you have something completely unique to offer. And that is really who you've always been and who you've always meant to be. So inner song hypnosis is about tapping into your own unique, authentic song, the music of your soul, and not allowing anybody else, any external situation, or past experience to dampen the sound of your inner song.
Oh, love that.
Thank you.
What a great explanation. Cool. Okay, so I want to back up. Going back to this notion of how our souls are reincarnating, we're in this incarnation here, we go back to the soul realm, and we, so forth and so forth. We're going over and over again to learn the lessons. So I know that one explanation of a soul, quote unquote, retiring, right, is enlightenment. Or it could be samadhi. It could be so many different things. So I'm just curious to know, where do you land on this whole notion of soul retirement, or is that even a thing?
So for me, the people I work with, humans, right? So I take a person that's physically embodied and look at their past lives and look at the time that they spent in between their lifetimes. So every single person I have ever worked with is not to that place yet. Like, I don't know what happens the last time you visit, like what happened for the last time.
Right.
But
they wouldn't be here.
Right. Exactly. So this is just now talking about like what has come up in my sessions and my personal beliefs on the matter. I think that there's different levels. So I think being a human and learning all of your lessons, at some point you learn your lessons. And so it's like, you graduate. And so at that point, I think that you have a decision and you have an option. You can continue to come back and be in physical embodiment in order to help other people learn their lessons, basically be a teacher,
right?
Be like somebody wise on the planet,
which could be enlightened.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people believe that to be true about, like Jesus, for example.
Okay.
Like, somebody that has gone through, done the work, learned their lessons, and chose really out of the kindness of their heart, because let's face it, being on earth can be so freaking hard and so painful and so sad, also beautiful and lovely and all the good things, but it can be hard. And it's certainly harder than being in spiritual form. So I think they make the hard decision out of love to come and continue to help and make an influence. Or I think you can like move on. And at that moving on point, I imagine you could become a spirit guide, or they refer in hypnotherapy terms, it's referred to as like the council of elders or the wise ones. Have you heard of that?
Yep.
Okay. So you could become like, continue leveling up in like the spiritual hierarchy, until ultimately, I think you probably move back to source. Like I see like each time you level up and you learn your lessons, and at the end of it is a place of never ending love and compassion and light. And you just kind of like reabsorb into source,
right?
Is my guess. Like, and then there's all these different thoughts that are coming to my mind right now of information that I've heard that might go against that belief. But I think that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have any channeling abilities? Are you connected to your guides in any way?
So I definitely do not consider myself to be a medium or an intuitive. I do connect to my guides, but things come to me more as a knowing. So I don't hear like an audible voice, or I don't have like an open-ended communication, but I just have this gut feeling and this gut knowing. So yes, I connect to my guides, and I constantly ask my guides to be with me, my spirit guides and my angels, and I feel their presence and I feel them like pushing me in a certain direction. But no, I would not say that I can channel, not yet anyways. And I hope that my intuitive abilities continue to evolve and unfold as I give more time to my meditation practice, and as I spend more time in this field and using this healing modality.
Definitely. Yeah.
Like even now, in my practice more. I get so many comments, like when I'm leading someone through a hypnotherapy session, after the session's over, I'll get comments like, that was really crazy. I was literally thinking about this exact thing, like this exact visual was in my mind. And then you told me to imagine that. And it could be something really obscure. And so for me, I know that that means that we're in that intuitive space together, and like we're very, very connected. And that happens more and more as I continue to do this work. So hopefully in the future, I would love to be able to channel through journaling, through writing. Um, yeah, but I've got to keep working on it.
Yeah.
It's not something that a gift that has come to me naturally without me even trying.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And little spoiler alert, I do have an intuitive channeler that is scheduled to come on the show.
Nice.
So she might be able to provide some additional information.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been my understanding that all of us have the ability to do it and channel in various different ways. It's just a matter of being able to get one on that vibration. And two, there's a guidebook. Like there's a how-to on how to do all this stuff. So I'm staying open.
Oh yeah. And I think that if I were to put a lot of effort and time towards it, I'd probably be way further than I am right now. I just have a lot that I'm putting effort and energy towards, but absolutely. I think that I agree with you. I think that anybody can be intuitive and can be a medium and can channel their guides and their higher self.
Yeah.
If they just put enough energy towards it.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, I think it's been a lot of, like we were talking about earlier, the fear. It's the fear of judgment, that people are going to think that I'm crazy and, I'm a licensed therapist and I'm supposed to be all legit, and you're out of your mind if you're over there channeling spirits. So I still battle that. But I've made a lot of progress with it. I constantly feel like I'm putting one foot in and one foot, into Eastern and Western. Ta-da, why the podcast exists. But yeah, I'm sure I'm not alone there.
And you're definitely not alone. I think that's normal for us to have that fear, but you doing this, you making a podcast and talking about how science and spirituality meet, and you just giving yourself permission to talk about what you want to talk about and to be your authentic self, you are paving the way for other therapists and other people that want to be professional and want to be viewed a certain way because, and respected, and also are into spirituality. And I think that that's just going to make you a better therapist. Like if you can tap into spirit, you can tap into someone's higher self, and you don't have to tell them, you can ask them the right questions.
Yes.
That'll lead them to them coming up with the answers. And it's only going to make you a stronger therapist.
Thank you for that. And it sparked this idea of something that I've been kind of tossing around here lately, is that when I do develop more of those channeling abilities, because I've got some of it already, I have some clairvoyance and clairaudience. I don't want to cheat. I don't want to be with a client. And because of the nature of the type of work that I do, it is very intuitive. It's very, what's the word? I guess it's just so sensitive. Like I'm involved in it. Like with experiential therapy, the therapist is part of the therapy. It's not just I'm sitting across from you and you're just telling me about your thoughts and feelings, right? It's a very much integrated dynamic process. I don't want to cheat. I don't want to channel things because one, I think that's unethical. I don't think that's okay. There must be consent anytime that happens. But what if you can't help it? I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard before, anytime I do energy work with somebody, which by the way, like hypnotherapy, it is energetic work too, because you're like you can easily sense and feel all the different energies that are stored in the person's body.
Yeah.
They can do that for themselves rather. You can always ask them. So if there's somebody that is open to spirituality and the fact that you're intuitive, you could always ask them if it's okay for you to connect with their higher self and, to use that as a part of the session. But yeah, if you can't help it, like if you're just being bombarded with information, or even not bombarded, even just one piece of information is coming to you, I kind of believe that as long as you're trying your best to help the client and you have the client's best interest and highest purpose in mind
and permission,
then you're being sent that for a reason. Like their higher self might be sending that information to you, being like, please help me. Like I need you to ask this right question so that my client can get insight.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there's definitely been, I mean, very vivid examples I can think of from this past week, even where there's just stuff that is just screaming at me, like say this or ask this, and I get caught. But anyway, that's helpful.
Yeah.
That's really
I feel
helpful.
like that's hard to navigate, and I'm not there, so I can't say exactly how I would navigate that or what I would do in that situation. Our another hypnotherapist that works for Inner Song Hypnosis, she is intuitive, and so she has that same back and forth, and she might be able, even though we're not counselors also, so we're not going to tell a person, we're not going to give a person advice or tell them how they need to be living their life or diagnose them. It's a different type of help. But she might know by looking at a person or talking with them that the root of their problem stems from childhood at age 4 when they were in a certain situation before she even leads them into the session. So instead of telling the client, well, you have this fear because of this thing that happened to you when you were 4 years old with with your teacher, she might just tell them to, in hypnosis, go back to the time when that first started. Go back to the time when the issue first started and let them discover that for themselves. Yeah. But spirit is guiding her line of questioning, and spirit is guiding the way she approaches the session. Yeah. You have no idea how much you just helped me. That's wonderful. Thank you. Spirit, love it. So speaking of that, one of the things that I want to know personally, but also I'm sure some of our audience wants to know too, for folks that go to therapy, either go to therapy on their own and they're curious about hypnotherapy, or even the other way around, they do hypnotherapy and they're curious about therapy. From your point of view, how do they complement one another? How do they work together? Yeah, I think that they work very well together. So talking with somebody can be super insightful, right? Like you can logically and analytically understand why you are the way that you are, why you have that insecurity, or what relationship in your life needs to be healed, or ways that you need to be acting different, right? That's therapy is so good for that. And hypnotherapy can then, okay, so actually let me take a step back. Just because you know that there's an issue, let me give an example. I know that I don't handle conflict very well. So, an example might be you start yelling when you feel attacked. You're feeling really sensitive. And instead of just talking to your partner in a calm manner, you start screaming. You might know that that's not good for you or your partner or your relationship, but you can't help it if it's a subconscious, like, protection mechanism, right? Like it's a natural reaction. So logically, analytically understanding something, although it's insightful for me, it can help give me peace of mind. It's not necessarily going to change the way I act in that moment. Right. Just like if you touch something hot, you immediately pull away. You don't have to think about it. You just pull away because your subconscious is constantly protecting you. Same thing with how that person is handling their relationships. So hypnotherapy, then, okay, they come in and they know the issue. I can't stop screaming at my partner. Every time we have a mild disagreement, I get really defensive and I start raising my voice and yelling, and it ends up getting into a fight and ruining our whole night over something stupid. Yeah. So then hypnotherapy can take you back to the time first started when you first started having issues with conflict. And you might go to a time when you were younger. Maybe the only way that you could be heard was by raising your voice and yelling because everyone was dismissing you. That's just one example. Yeah, it's a good one. So understanding that that's where that comes from, you're also now releasing that unhelpful protection mechanism of anger, of yelling. And maybe that person never would have even been able to get to the point where they want to come to hypnotherapy if they hadn't gone to talk therapy and understood it better first. Makes sense. Or vice versa. Or vice versa, right? And so that's just one example. But I had a lot of people that have come to me because they've been going to talk therapy for a while and they still can't help that they have social anxiety. Yeah. Right. Like they can understand that I don't need to have a fear of being judged. They can understand that my friends are choosing to come over to my house because they love me and they want to spend time with me, but I can't help that I feel nervous and awkward and I get really quiet. And that is when hypnotherapy can be really beneficial, because things that you like kind of spinning your wheels on through traditional talk therapy, try out hypnosis because it's likely something stemming from the subconscious. And it can be relieved somewhat easily. And so that's my question, is that what is the healing properties or the dynamic, the process that's happening during hypnotherapy that's helping to release that shit? Okay. That's a great question. So I feel like, let me give you an example. So a very common one is, low self-worth or feeling a lack of confidence or like a social anxiety, like I was just saying. So somebody comes to me, we get into a state of hypnosis through, it really feel in the beginning, it's going to feel like a guided meditation to get into that relaxed state. And then understanding the root of the problem. So going back to the time when social anxiety first started for you. Now they're going back to a time when they were in the classroom and they were learning how to read for the first time. And they're doing that popcorn reading thing that stressed all of us out as kids. And they get to themselves and now they have to read this paragraph to their class. And maybe they mispronounce a word and that word sounds like another word that the class finds very silly. And so now the class is laughing. And in that moment, anytime you feel an intense emotion, for that example, you feel embarrassed or you feel awkward, but you could feel betrayed or abandoned or sad, whatever negative emotion you experience, that moment, your subconscious mind takes a snapshot. What's happening right now to cause these feelings? Because I don't want you to ever have to feel this way again. You might be unsafe. And so right then and there, a protection mechanism is put in place to protect the client, a social anxiety, for example. And so just going back and reliving that experience, a few things happen. It brings up the emotion. So I always ask the client, how do you feel? I feel stupid. I feel sad. I feel embarrassed. I feel like no one likes me. I feel like I'm a joke. And by the way, even little kids have very big feelings and very, very big thoughts, right? Like they might not be able to communicate that with us, but they're, that they're thinking that and they're feeling that. So two things happen. Two or three things happen for the actual shift to take place and the healing to take place. I believe we store that emotion in our body. So we store the sadness, not on purpose, right? We feel sad. And then we're also not really taught tools as kids, how to release those emotions and process them in a healthy manner. Or maybe that person never even told their parents about that. And they just held on to that because they didn't know there was a different option.
And it's still there.
It's still there. And it's literally still there. And you're carrying that around with you every single day of your life. And a lot of people are kind of nervous to try hypnotherapy because they don't want it to be too emotional. But I'm like, you could either just look at that emotion and deal with that over the course of a couple sessions, or you could carry that around with you every single day of your life.
You already are. That's the difference.
Like you don't have an option. You are carrying it around.
Yeah.
So then, okay, they're saying, I'm feeling really sad, I'm feeling stupid, I'm feeling like no one likes me. And then I have them tune into their body. So where are you holding that in the body, or what part of the body is standing out to you as holding on to tension and stress? And 99% of the time, a person can locate where that emotion is in the body. Doesn't matter if they even knew about emotions and how we store it in the body. They feel that in the session. Oh yeah, I'm feeling like a really like bad tightness in my left hip, or I'm feeling like a heaviness on my chest. And we've all been there before. Like when we feel depressed or we feel anxious, there's a physical manifestation of that. You know, you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders or your chest is tightening. And then this is like the little bit of the energetic side of it. We feel into it, and I have the client imagine within that part of the body, there's like a cloud of emotion, and it's time to let that go. Yeah. So first thing is giving your body permission to let that go, because I believe also a lot of times we hold on to that thinking that fear or that belief is going to help us some way or protect us. Really, I think it just acts as a magnet for more.
Well, at one time it did protect us temporarily, but it's outdated.
Exactly, for sure. So yeah. And so there's a little bit of difference there, how I view it. So the emotion and the energy is stored in the body, and we have to give the body permission to let that go. And then from that emotion, from that energy, that's when a protection mechanism was put in place as well. So there's a part of your subconscious mind that thinks that freezing up is what's going to keep you safe. Right. So just keep quiet. Don't say anything at all. And then you're not going to be made fun of, and you're not going to be laughed at. So first letting go of that emotion, and it's pretty easy to let it go once you know that it's there and once you are feeling it. It's not hard at all, actually. And everyone can do that. And
just got to find it first.
Yeah. And sometimes, hypnotherapy is a great way of like understanding when that first got there and why it's there. But sometimes we're able to release that through other means too. Like that's why if any of your listeners are into like yoga and just have randomly started crying in a yoga session during a hip opener, that's because you're feeling into that motion, and that emotion is stored in your muscles, and you can let that go through different means. And hypnotherapy is one way to let that go. Yeah. So releasing of emotion is honestly, like if we were just to end the session right there, super healing, super transformative. You're going to feel physically and emotionally different. usually that fear will go away right then and there as well. But also sometimes we have to address that part of you. So there's like a part or an aspect of that person's subconscious mind that thinks that they're helping them. And it's an interesting way to look at things like fears and anxieties, because normally we just beat ourselves up. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm not confident with my friends that I've had for years. Like, why do I still feel this way? That's so dumb. We tell ourselves that, but that's that part of you is just trying to keep you safe and just trying to protect you.
Right.
So we can actually call forth that part of your subconscious mind to understand what role it plays for you in your life, and then get it to take on a new role. It just wants to help you, but maybe it can help you in a different way. Maybe it would be more helpful and beneficial at this point in your life for you to just be more confident, because you've already cultivated, a community of people that accept you for who you are. Just be more confident in yourself, and then you'll be able to speak up. And really, anyways, that's what's going to help you cultivate more community and be more successful in group scenarios anyways.
Yep.
So it's about helping that subconscious part of you to understand that, get to take on a new role. And then also the third thing I would say, the reason why it can be transformative and healing is because of the belief system. So in that moment, a belief was probably formed. And it can happen like with a snap of a finger. It can happen so fast. And so maybe that belief is that I'm not good at talking in front of my peers. Maybe the belief is that people don't like me. Whatever the belief was, at the time, it felt very real and it felt like the truth. But as an adult, when you're older and wiser, you can understand that belief, it's not serving you and it's not even true.
Right.
So the subconscious mind holds your belief system. So you can basically, imagine throwing that old belief out and coming up with a new belief that I do have a lot to say. I do have good communication skills. People do like me. I am worthy of people's time and attention.
Right.
So it's about releasing the emotion, changing the protection mechanism, and changing the belief.
Yeah.
And that's, I would say, the three main reasons why hypnotherapy works and why it's so successful. And then there's also the spiritual aspect, of like the fourth bonus reason, because in that state of trance, in that state of hypnosis, you're more connected spiritually to your higher self. You're more connected to your spirit guides, and there's so much wisdom there.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. I can see how that all ties together. Beautiful. Beautiful explanation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you would like to share? Anything general on your heart, on your mind?
There's just so much that I could say. I think most people will benefit from hypnotherapy. I guess actually something that I would like to say is just addressing the misconceptions of hypnotherapy and kind of understanding really what it is. So hypnosis is when you go into a state of trance in order to access your subconscious mind to overcome certain issues or reach goals. What technically is happening, I think I mentioned this earlier, is that your brain waves are slowing down. And this is a very normal and natural process. People don't understand or realize that we're actually in a state of trance so often. So every single night before you fall asleep, you're in trance. Every morning when you first wake up, even after you sit up out of bed, go do your bathroom stuff, you're still in a state of trance. And then various times throughout the day,
like when you're dissociating.
When you're dissociating, or when you're, watching TV, I guess dissociating is probably happening there. When you're driving, like a lot of people have experienced highway hypnosis. It feels scary. And that's why we notice, because when you get from point A to point B, you might be sitting in your driveway, having just driven home from work and don't really remember the whole drive. You were in a state of trance, or just feeling super relaxed. We get into a state of trance. Now, there's other ways that we get into hypnosis or trance as well. And that's when you're shocked, confused, or scared. So if any of your listeners have ever struggled with fear of public speaking, and I used to struggle with this, there would be times where I didn't remember my presentation.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have even known what I said unless somebody had recorded the presentation. I basically blacked out.
Yeah.
And that's because I was so nervous that what I was about to go, like I'm going into war. Even that's what my body thinks. My body is like hyping up to keep me safe because I'm not safe.
Accurate.
And so when you're not safe, your subconscious mind oftentimes does a better job at keeping you alive than you could, right? It's the fight or flight or freeze response. So yeah, it happens. This natural state of trance happens all the time. And we don't normally use it to our benefit. In fact, if we're going to use it, it's accidentally towards our detriment, usually.
Right.
Worrying as you're falling asleep late at night, worst time to worry is when you're in trance, because you are practicing self-hypnosis, but you're doing it for the more negative outcome.
Sure.
And then so besides it just being a natural state of being, I always like to let people know that because people think it's going to be hard to achieve. And it's really nothing that you have to do or achieve as the client. It's more about trying to listen to the sound of the hypnotherapist's voice, following their super simple instructions like take a deep breath, focus on your feet, imagine a rainbow. And through that, just also trying to let go and relax. And then you're going to naturally enter that state of trance. And it happens really easily. And you remember the whole session. You can talk with the hypnotherapist. You can move around during the session. You know, moving is not going to take you out of trance. These are all just some misconceptions that people have from like Hollywood movies and things.
Sure.
And the other one is that the hypnotherapist has no power over you. So you are always in control. You can analyze everything that's happening. The only prerequisites for hypnosis to work is first that you have to be a willing participant. You know, you have to be a willing client. And then second, that you have to want the change for yourself. So
You make that sound so easy.
right. And it's not. That's the one thing. Like, I mean, there's a lot of things I can't do for my clients, but that's the biggest thing. Is I can't make somebody want to change.
Thank you.
I cannot. Like, I can, if you have your hand extended and you want help, I will be right there, more than willing to help you. But you have to want that change. And so it's kind of funny, but most of the time when it applies is when like someone's partner or family member is calling me up on their behalf. Can you make my husband quit smoking cigarettes? I'm like, well, does your husband want to stop smoking cigarettes? Not really, no, but he's willing to try hypnosis. Like he could come in and try, but honestly, it'd be a waste of your time and your energy because if he doesn't want that change for himself, it will simply not work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So many corollaries there too. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
And anything else that you want to share?
I don't think so. I mean, there's so much that I could share, but I feel like we covered a lot today, and it's been really fun talking with you.
Yeah, same here. So, last question: how do you nourish yourself?
How do I nourish myself? Like energetically, emotionally?
Yes.
Physically?
Yes.
Okay. All of the above. Okay. I nourish myself through a lot of different self-care practices. My self-care practices, I really do look at it as like my church almost. So yoga for me is super grounding and super healing. For me, I'm kind of, as a lot of people that like to talk about spirituality, my head can be up in the clouds sometimes. Feel like I am very energetically connected to the universe or source or my angels. So constantly I'm having to ground myself because I live here on planet Earth and I got to do things, really tangible things like pay my bills and feed my cat and all that stuff. So I need to be really grounded. So constantly grounding myself through meditation and visualization. Every morning, I like to start off by sending my grounding energy cord that connects my root chakra, the base of my spine, down into the earth and feeling grateful. So gratitude is actually probably one of my most nourishing practices is thinking about things that I have in my life that to be grateful for. It doesn't have to be things about myself or things that I own, but I can feel grateful for the fact that my favorite flower exists or the sound of the birds singing to me as I walk through the park. So gratitude practice, constantly meditating, eating healthy. I'm very sensitive. So although I'm not always eating healthy, I notice a drastic shift in how I'm feeling if I'm consuming like unhealthy processed foods compared to healthy whole foods and like eating organically. And acupuncture has been a really good way for me to stay grounded and nourish myself as well. And dancing. I don't know if I'm answering your question the way that you wanted me to answer it, but for me, dancing to music that I like with my friends is like the most nourishing practice I could think of.
Love that. Yeah, same for me. I think movement-based things are probably at the top of my list.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. Yeah. And thanks for being a guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really nice talking with you today.
Same here. So if you want to connect with Melanie, you can find her. Her website is www.innersonghypnosis.com. And if you are looking to book a session, you can book a consultation there. And you can also find her on Instagram at innersonghypnosis as well. Anything else?
I think that's it. So most of us most of the time we're seeing clients one-on-one,
Mhm.
but also do some group hypnosis events in case people want to just try it out in like a little bit of a more lighthearted environment. They don't have any group hypnosis sessions scheduled right now, but probably one will be scheduled within the next month or so.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. And you also offer single sessions as well as packages too.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So I encourage people, hypnotherapy is one of those things that we don't really know what to expect because unfortunately it's not that mainstream yet. So you might not know of anyone that's ever had hypnotherapy and you certainly haven't experienced it for yourself. You can always start by booking a single session. And if you like your session and you want to keep doing more at the end of that session, you can still sign up for the package and get that discounted rate.
Nice.
So you don't really have to commit ahead of time.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Sage Holistic Healing. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.